The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Eye Test, brought to you by Belly Up Sports Media. I'm here with Bobby Amendola and Paul Orlando, the Devontae Adams superfan, and today's episode is the Fantasy Doghouse. And we did hand out 2 free tickets to the Doghouse in yesterday's episode, so you can go back to our YouTube page or Spotify or Apple and check out those episodes. You can see who's automatically going in. But we got a lot of names to go over today. We got to go over who's breaking free from the probationary portal. The first week that we can do that, that means that these players have performed as predicted or better than what they were projected to be. So they are now free men. Of course, we've got guys going from the Doghouse to the probationary portal. We got only a couple names on the stand this week. And then we got regular guys that are staying in the Doghouse, getting comfy, and welcoming in the new members of the Doghouse. So we got a good show for you guys today and a surprise location, which we will go over in a couple of minutes. But let's go ahead here and talk about the guys that are breaking free. They have performed well for 2 weeks in a row. Players like DJ Moore, we put him right in the Doghouse because of his expectations, and he has performed well 2 weeks in a row. He was a borderline freedom player. I mean, he scored just over 10 points, but for his ADP value, we think that's good enough for him to break free. Then we got the quarterbacks that we all thought were just going to be top performers, and they're going to continue to be top performers. Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, DeAndre Swift, someone we threw in the Doghouse. He was most improved last week and performed well again, rushing over 100 yards and out-snapping Kenny Gainwell. And then, of course, we got Terry McLaurin. He another debatable player like DJ Moore, but he did perform well for someone who's probably your wide receiver too, and he got somewhere around 11 points, I believe, which you can be happy with a wide receiver too, especially when you're going against the Bills getting blown out. And then Christian Kirk. Again, we don't know if it's going to be a Calvin Ridley game or a Christian Kirk game, but for the last 2 weeks, it has been a Christian Kirk game. So congratulations to these guys breaking free out of the Doghouse, performing well for 2 weeks in a row. We can head on back over to the probationary portal, which I flashed a little bit early. But, Bob, how about you take away? Who are these guys that got to do well one more week?
So real quick, George Kittle, couple mediocre weeks in a row, but came back strong this week as we expected that he would do. And he makes his way into the probationary portal. We'll see how he does this week and if he'll be able to break free. Alexander Madison, a guy that we thought maybe would be, was potentially bust worthy, came back strong this week. And as always, we'll see if he could make it out again. Maybe Cam Akers plays this week and eats into his snap share a little bit. We'll see. Jamar Chase is the king right here. Everyone was panicking a little bit if you were an owner, especially if you were 0-2. Came back very strong this week. No touchdowns, unfortunately, but 20-plus. Did really well. Dameon Pierce is another guy that did, okay. Not astounding, but enough to bring him out of the Doghouse, basically just meeting expectations. And kind of the same deal with Isaiah Pacheco, who had his best game of the year, around 15 points. He is a little touchdown dependent, but he did get that touchdown this week, which was enough for him to make it into the probationary portal. So let's see if he could do it again this upcoming week.
All right, very good. Yes, got our eyes on them. And up next, we got the guys that are staying in the Doghouse from last week. They're continuing to do bad. So let's check that out here. First up, Bob, how about you take us away with the first player that is staying in? And what do you think about next week, if they're going to go on probationary portal, if they're just going to stay in?
Well, raise your hand if you thought Joe Burrow would be outside the top 25 after 3 weeks.
Ooh, no.
Joe Burrow is the quarterback 30 after week 3, only has 2 touchdown passes. And if you remember last week, if you were tuning in, I believe me and John both predicted that he would get out of the Doghouse, but he did not. Didn't even get 10 points. and he just doesn't look like himself, quite frankly. Like I said earlier, Jamar Chase had a good game, but really didn't mean much for Joe Burrow. And although he has a cake matchup next week at Tennessee, who we know have gotten shredded all season long so far, his projection is pretty much 19 points, and I'm scared that he's not going to get it. If my gut tells me that he's still going to stay in the doghouse, at this point, I need to see it to believe it with Joe Burrow.
Yeah. Another quarterback that has been in the doghouse since week 1. That's Justin Fields. He was like a 4th or 5th round quarterback in your redraft leagues, and boy, is he disappointing. Putting up 9 points, 10 points, 11 points. Cool improvement. Not showing that rushing upside that we were all expecting. Only has 1 rushing touchdown. He's thrown more interceptions than he has touchdowns, and it is not looking good. However, and he did get like a concussion, so he got banged up against Kansas City in week 3. But again, it's like he's going against Denver, the worst, just lost 17-20, excuse me. And do you start him? Do you bench him? Quite honestly, I think you have to bench him until he proves you otherwise. What's nice is that he's got a 4-week span. And I would even argue a 5-week span: Denver, Washington, Minnesota, Raiders, Chargers. So bench him for this week. No longer get disappointed by Justin Fields. And if he performs well against Denver, you can throw him back into your starting lineup. But I am not starting Justin Fields. And quite honestly, I don't think he's going to get out onto the probationary portal.
Yeah, and then moving right along here, we have Dallas Goedert. He's going to stay in the doghouse. He did have 7 targets these past 2 weeks, which is good. We like that. That's not bad, but it's what he's doing with those targets. He is not even averaging 6 yards per target. He has yet to eclipse 10 points. And from what many hoped would be a top 5, top 6 tight end this year, he is not even a top 2 tight end. So if you're in a weird league that has 2 tight ends, you're not even starting Dallas Goedert at this point. He is in a high-powered offense, so I think he will eventually find his way out of this penitentiary. But for now, he remains
in the doghouse.
In the doghouse.
All right, Bob, who you got next? Another guy staying in here.
Another guy staying in, and who I'm going to predict is going to head over to Bust Island after this week. Yep. Najee Harris is going to be heading over to Bust Island after this week. His projection is for 12 points in PPR leagues, but I've been on this a little bit recently. What made Najee Harris so good in his rookie year was that he was heavily involved in the passing game. He was getting checks downs left and right from washed up Ben Roethlisberger. He's just not getting it from Kenny Pickett, and there's no reason to believe that it's going to happen. Jaylen Warren is getting more pass game work, and Najee's just not that good of a runner to make up for it. His season high in points up to this point is 6.5. He's not really doing that well on the ground. Last game against the Raiders, 19 rushes for 65 yards. Just not good enough for a guy that was being drafted in the 3rd round. And after week 3, he's barely in the top 50, RB 48. And I just don't see a path for that to really change unless the Steelers just decide they're going to change up their offense completely for Najee Harris. So Najee Harris to Bust Island.
And since you're bringing up Bust Island, let's go ahead. And this is a new location that we just added. These are players that are headed to Bust Island because they're not getting out of the doghouse. Let's be honest. So let's show you what that looks like here. We got Antonio Gibson, Kadarius Toney, Cam Akers, and Jahan Dotson. Jahan Dotson probably the most potential to get out if something were to happen to Terry McLaurin. But honestly, he continues to get outplayed in terms of volume by Terry McLaurin, so it's going to be tough. Cam Akers is on a new team. Maybe him joining the Vikings could help, but I don't see Kadarius Toney or Antonio Gibson breaking out. Paul, you see any players on here that you think could break out?
No. Jahan Dotson, like you said, Jahan Dotson might be the only one, but Kadarius Toney's garbage. Cam Akers, garbage. Antonio Gibson, my God, have we ever seen like a 1st-round pick fall this, or a 1st-round pick in fantasy fall this far from grace than Antonio Gibson?
You're right.
I don't know.
He
That's
was a first
crazy. I
round pick
forgot
at some
about that.
point. Yeah.
Well, it looks like they'll have to make room for Najee Harris here.
Yikes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we should have called it Yikes Island. Yikers.
Yikers
Oh, that's
Island,
good.
bro.
Yikers
Bro,
Island.
Yikers
Dude, that's
Island.
great.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah,
Yikers
Najee Harris
Island, bro.
splitting carries with Jalen Warren practically almost 50-50 last week. I believe it
Yeah.
was like 54-46 or something.
It's been consistently happening. Yeah.
Very, very nervous. All right, let's talk about my favorite player in the doghouse and so close to moving over to Bust Island. That's Kyle Pitts. 8 points. He's showing improvement. He did get 9 targets, but he's not catching them. And quite honestly, I do think that it is quarterback play, but we can't keep giving him that excuse. However, if the Falcons were to get a new quarterback, I would probably be up on Kyle Pitts again. But for next week, going against Jacksonville, who before they played the Texans this week in week 3, they were giving up like 17 points per game. So I think that was a fluke game. I think going against Jacksonville, yeah, no question. Kyle Pitts is benchable and droppable in all redraft formats.
Yeah, moving right along here is a running back that led the league in rushing last year, and it's Josh Jacobs. Unfortunately, another underwhelming performance for his standards. He did score 11 points against Pittsburgh, but it's just not cutting it right now, with especially where you probably invested draft capital in him, especially if you had your draft after he signed and you knew that he was playing. So this Raiders offense, 1,000% runs through Devontae Adams and Devontae Adams only. If you have Josh Jacobs, you still have to start him because you're probably pigeonholed into starting him because you invested such a high draft pick in him. But in week 2, guys, in week 2, he only ran for -2 yards. He didn't even run for 0 yards. He had 9 carries for -2 yards, bro. It's a horrible time to be roommates with Josh Jacobs. You know, he's just absolutely fuming in the doghouse right now.
Yeah, for sure. he's like I do not belong here.
He's like, please, I'm glad I signed a 1-year deal because I can go somewhere else next year.
Yeah, right. All right, Bob, you think this next guy's going to get out of the doghouse next week?
I don't. And I hate to be repetitive, but I think this guy's going to head to Bust Island as well. Not because he doesn't have potential, but because of his unique situation right now. And A.J. Dillon, was horrible this past week as the primary back for the Green Bay Packers, with Aaron Jones still not playing, only putting up 3.3 points, 11 carries, 33 yards. You do the math, only 3 yards per carry. Clearly not good enough. And they have a short week this week against Detroit. Aaron Jones may play, but since it's a short week, I wouldn't bet on it. But even then, they're playing Detroit, who effectively shut down Bijan Robinson this past week. And I think we all could agree Bijan Robinson blows A.J. Dillon out of the water in terms of talent and pretty much everything involving the running back position. And Jordan Love's been cooking. I just don't see it for A.J. Dillon. And when Aaron Jones comes back, he's pretty much going to be useless besides as a handcuff on your bench. So he's going to be heading to Bust Island.
Wow, make some room. We're going to have to get a bigger island.
Yikes.
Let's talk about Jahmyr Gibbs here. He is showing improvement in the snap percentage, most likely because Monco is out. Getting 17 attempts versus the 7 that he's averaged the first 2 weeks. So that is promising, but he's not really doing anything with it. We need to see touchdowns out of Jahmyr Gibbs. Once we start to see that and receiving upside, Jahmyr Gibbs can get out. So he is going against Green Bay. I'm going to go ahead and say if Monco is out, Jahmyr Gibbs can find himself in the probationary portal. I feel like he's due for a touchdown. Green Bay's defense is no joking matter, but it's a divisional game, and I think it's just going to be hard-nosed football. Which is funny because I predicted that for Najee Harris against the Browns. I'm going to stick with it. History is on my side here. They're going to be running the ball. Jahmyr Gibbs will get opportunities, and he'll find himself on the probationary portal in Green Bay. Jahmyr Gibbs is still a start. He's still a start. Just a risky one.
I love Gibbs coming in, so I think
Flex. He's a
I
flex
think he
play.
figures his way
He's a
out.
okay.
He's
I
a
can get
flex.
on board with that. I can get on board
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah, I
On
think,
a injury riddled team.
Still wouldn't feel good about it though.
Yeah.
yeah.
No.
And similar to Josh Jacobs, just been a high value pick. I just remembered I forgot to predict Josh Jacobs's future status.
Oh, yeah.
I think he's going to be the biggest bust of 2023. I hate to admit it. He was a second round, maybe even a third round pick, and it's not looking good for him. So I don't think he makes it out of the doghouse. But moving on to somebody who I think will eventually make it out of the doghouse, that is Trevor Lawrence, my golden crimson-haired boy.
Let's go. Finally,
Wonder.
some optimism.
Yes, I love Trevor Lawrence. We've all seen him showcase his talent. I was very disappointed with the sense that he did not go absolutely bonkies on Houston. He only got 15 points, which again, as a QB1, isn't terrible. It's not horrible, but for somebody who you probably drafted to be a top 5 quarterback in this league, he ranks as a bottom tier QB2 at the moment. He does get Atlanta and then Buffalo and then Indy. So I do predict that Trevor Lawrence does find freedom in the next couple of weeks.
And we got one more guy that he should be in Bust Island. Why the hell is he still in the doghouse? Let's talk about Khalil Herbert real quick.
You know why? Because his matchup this week is screaming that he's going to make it out of the doghouse.
Yeah, he's going against
He's going against the Swiss cheese Denver defense, who just got completely torched by Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane. So if it's going to be any week, it's going to be this week for Khalil Herbert. I know there's this like narrative that like Roshan is coming, and maybe he is, but Roshan hasn't been particularly impressive, since his 7-catch performance in week 1, when pretty much that was all in garbage time. Khalil Herbert still is playing over 50% of the snaps. And again, this is basically just a matchup thing for me. He's predicted right now 7.7 points. I think he could get to the 10-point mark against this Denver defense. I'm not saying go rush to start him or anything like that, but he could be a sneaky play just based on matchup this week. And I think he is going to make it out of the doghouse this week by those standards.
Paul, based on Khalil Herbert's matchup, are you starting him?
I will if Aaron Jones does not play Thursday.
Do you own?
Oh,
Khalil
yeah.
Herbert?
Were you talking? I thought you were talking about me personally.
I didn't even know you had Khalil Herbert. I was
No,
just saying,
yeah, I have.
For our viewers.
Yeah, sorry, I have Khalil Herbert on my bench, so I apologize
okay.
about that. Am I starting Khalil Herbert? I'm going to relate it to a very similar situation I'm in. In a pinch, if I absolutely have to, I will. If you hopefully have better options at running back than Khalil Herbert at this moment. But if you don't, if you're dealing, say you got maybe a Nick Chubb, Saquon Barkley back to back, and you are really scrounging for running backs, I would start Khalil Herbert. But if your running back room is relatively the same, or maybe you have just one injury, I think there are plenty of other options that you probably have on your bench that would be better than a Khalil Herbert matchup friendly game.
All right, you heard it here first. Start Khalil Herbert if you have to.
If you absolutely have
Very
to.
safe answer. All right, let's welcome in a couple more players here. Of course, we are welcoming in Dalvin Cook and Garrett Wilson. We'll talk about them briefly. You guys want to get them over with right now?
Sure.
Yeah, all right. I'll talk about Garrett Wilson real quick. So obviously he's entering in because he's touchdown dependent, and it shows that when he doesn't score a touchdown, he scores below 10 points, even though he gets 9 targets. He's got a horrible quarterback throwing in the ball. He goes against KC. Their defense is not what we used to think about them.
No.
So I'm going to go ahead and say Garrett Wilson does not get out of the doghouse. Sorry, Garrett Wilson. Maybe next week against Denver in week 5.
Maybe when Trevor Siemian is starting.
Yeah, maybe when they trade for Kirk Cousins or something like that.
There's actually no way that happens, right? There's no way they bring in Kirk Cousins.
I don't think they can, because Aaron Rodgers is on a 2-year deal. So you're not going to sign Kirk to a 1-year deal.
There's literally 0% chance. Aaron Rodgers said he's coming back. They're not throwing that all out the window, and they're going to have their first, from that. I just don't. If anything, it's going to be I feel like they might just
Ryan Tannehill.
No, I don't think they're going to make a move. I think maybe they'll sign another free agent quarterback after Simeon. But honestly, I think they're just going to use the Rodgers thing as an excuse to be like, okay, we'll come back strong next year with our first round pick. And, hopefully Rodgers is healthy.
Okay. All right, then let's briefly go over Dalvin Cook here, who got a free ride to the doghouse in yesterday's episode.
Yeah, I mean, go check out that episode from yesterday if you guys haven't already. It was a really, really good one. But Dalvin Cook got our free pass, and it's just not pretty. I mean, he's averaging less than 2.5 yards per carry for someone who thought would be a veteran presence in this, Jets offense. He sucks. Like Dalvin Cook just looks like he sucks this year. And if you drafted him at best as like a high valued handcuff for Breece Hall, you suck because he is not doing well. It is awful. Please, you feel free to drop Dalvin Cook.
All right, let's get back into order, Bob. Who is the player that you're welcoming into the doghouse this week?
So
make room, boys. We're getting crowded here.
Well, it looks like another Jet is going to be bunking with Dalvin Cook and Garrett Wilson. But this guy I'm more optimistic about, and that's Breece Hall. He has to join the doghouse by our standards after these last 2 weeks. Kind of had an excuse after the week 2 game against Dallas. He only had 4 touches and resulted in 0.9 points. But last week, he had 12 carries, 2 targets, only resulted in 3.7 points in PPR leagues. And even though he's coming off the injury, even though he wasn't drafted extremely high, you just expect a little bit more from Breece Hall. And I think this is more of a product of the Jets just not knowing how to utilize him or not, be willing to utilize him properly with Zach Wilson under center. But we know Breece Hall is capable of being explosive and productive with a mediocre quarterback under center. So I do think this week he will be able to get out of the doghouse, assuming that the Jets just are like, okay, let's use you a little bit in the passing game. We know you're much better than Dalvin Cook. Let's just take off all the shackles and everything. You're healthy. We need you. Let's go. Let's play.
Yeah. It's going to help out Zach Wilson, too. Like, stop telling him to throw the ball and just give it to Breece.
I know.
It sounds so simple.
People will say, stack the box and everything. But again, you could use him in more ways than just running him right up the middle. And They're going to need him against Kansas City. He's projected 9.5 points. Maybe I'm just a blind, optimistic Jets fan, but I feel like that he should easily be able to get that.
Yeah, I agree with both of those statements. I do think you're blind and optimistic, and I also think that Breece Hall can find his way onto the probationary portal. I also think this running back could do it too. Similar situation to Breece, both having career-ending injuries last year. Javonte Williams. So he's coming into the doghouse. He was actually on Neighborhood Watch last week. And he put up 8.5 points, being blown out against the Dolphins. But yeah, I mean, he could have been utilized in the passing game more. 3 targets, 2 catches, not doing much with it. 23 yards in the passing game. He does go against the Bears in week 4. So again, if he's going to get out onto the probationary portal, it's this week against the Bears. He is projected the most points that he's been projected all year, which is 12. So if he can put up, dude, if he puts up 10 points, like I think I would maybe think to put him up on the stand into probationary portal there. But Javonte Williams, if he has been your flex, I would say you probably got to keep him there against the Bears.
Yeah.
Paul?
Yeah, well, guys, this is a sad day for me personally. I never thought that I knew this day would come eventually. I didn't think it would come this year. When I just talked about Dalvin Cook and how he's in the doghouse and he was, a fantasy perennial superstar. And I'm going to bring up another fantasy perennial superstar, and that's DeAndre Hopkins. He finds his way into the doghouse, and this pains me to say because he's got all the talent in the world. But my God, do the Tennessee Titans suck? D-Hop was held to just 3 catches he hasn't eclipsed 50 yards in the past 2 weeks, and his career at the Titans is off to a rocky start. He's 31 years old. God, the Titans just look horrible. He does get the struggling Cincinnati and then Indy, which is okay. The Ravens secondary is injured, so maybe, but I just don't see DeAndre Hopkins coming out of the doghouse unless maybe there's a midseason trade to, I don't know, the Kansas City Chiefs, which is probably where he should have gone with from the get-go. But yeah, sad day. Dalvin Cook and DeAndre Hopkins, both borderline fantasy irrelevant.
Very
Ooh.
sad. Very sad.
Yeah,
Two
we'll have
guys.
to have a fantasy funeral soon.
Yeah. Two guys that, were high perennial first round draft picks for years in a row. And
Staples on your fantasy team.
Yeah.
Absolute staples.
Yeah.
And now they're not even a paperclip.
I remember I remember draft like when running backs were still being drafted so high and there wasn't the wave of like wide receivers and everything. I remember being able to get DeAndre Hopkins at like pick number 8. And I'm like, ooh, I don't know if that's good because everyone's just like focused on running backs. But then you're getting a perennial wide receiver 1 with Deshaun Watson at the time. That was just ridiculously explosive. And it's unfortunate now. But let's move on to the final guy that I have that's entering the doghouse. And that's Calvin Ridley. We gave him a break after with the week 2 performance where he only had 5 points. Obviously, he had that, really good week 1 performance with 26 points. But one of the biggest reasons he finds himself in the doghouse this week, aside from the fact that he obviously didn't even hit double-digit points, is the drops. He dropped like 4 passes this week. One of them that could have went for a touchdown. So if he catches that one, he probably has close to 15 points at least. And then you're not talking about being in the doghouse, but he did not pass the eye test at all this week. Single digits 2 weeks in a row. Not going to cut it for a guy that was going in the mid to late third, or in some leagues, early third, actually. So I will say, though, I think he's going to stay in the doghouse, but he's got that revenge game next week against Atlanta at home.
Actually in London.
Oh.
Does that change your opinion?
No.
He hates London. Revenge game against London.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
Although
they took our independence.
Maybe it does change it a little bit, but I'm going to stick to my guns. Those London games do get weird, but he's still playing his former team. You got to think Doug Peterson and T-Law are going to be dialing some stuff up for him in that game, and projected 13 points right now. Again, he could have had that this week if he just didn't drop that touchdown pass. So it really shouldn't take that much for him to get out of the doghouse, and I do think he will.
Yeah, I feel like after a big loss to like the Texans like that, you got to switch things up. And I'm sure Doug Peterson is like, dude, you got to look for Ridley and Christian Kirk. Like, it can't just be Christian Kirk every time.
Yeah, and Ridley just has to catch the ball. The targets are there. Are there. That's the good thing. It's not like T-Law just stopped throwing him the ball or anything. So targets are there. I think he'll get out next week.
Yeah, so keep starting Ridley if you have him. I know it's not fun, but you got to do it. It's part of the game.
Yeah.
David Njoku, welcome in. We had high hopes for you because Deshaun Watson was your quarterback now. We felt like it was just going to be Amari Cooper and you. Now that Nick Chubb is out, high hopes even more. It's like, cool, they're going to throw the ball. And Njoku is not getting any volume. He has not surpassed 4 targets yet. However, in the last 2 weeks where he's gotten 4 targets, he does have 4 catches. But he's a touchdown-dependent tight end, like most tight ends. So it's going to be very hard for tight ends that enter the doghouse to get out. Dallas Goedert, definitely more promise out of all the tight ends in the doghouse currently to get out. But David Njoku, Kyle Pitts, you're probably going to be staying in, especially for the fact that David Njoku has to go against the Ravens next week. Ravens should absolutely demolish the Browns. You're welcome, Paul.
I don't know.
I wouldn't. It's a division game.
Guys? Really?
Division games get weird, but
the Browns blew out the Bengals in week 1.
Well, you're right. I mean, we're a quarter way through the season almost, and I think the Ravens do have. Well, Paul, you might disagree with this, but I feel like the Ravens' offense is fine if Lamar Jackson is taking off running?
Yes and no.
No.
Yeah, I don't know. Todd Monken is just. It looked very elementary against Indianapolis. Our offense just looked very,
Yeah,
very
I can agree
basic
with that.
again, and I just did not like that. But we looked super good against the Bengals, so I don't know what happened. Maybe it's just a weird game. But I'm gonna say one thing before we close out. And I just want to hear you guys' opinion on it, because I am just convinced that David Njoku and Kyle Pitts are the same person. Like, I don't think that you can persuade me that they are not the same person. Every year with David Njoku, we're like, raw talent, physical skills. He finally got a quarterback, this, that, the other.
Yeah,
And
red zone targets.
Yeah, and he just sucks. And it's the same with Kyle Pitts. Perennial talent, Hall of Famer, top 5 pick.
Tony Gonzalez comp.
Yeah, Tony Gonzalez 2.0, and it's like, and he just sucks. Like, I think David Njoku and Kyle Pitts literally just like take turns playing for the Cleveland Browns and the Atlanta Falcons, and they just swap, and they just both suck.
Yeah,
Like,
I think the only difference is like there's probably a lot more hope with Kyle Pitts because he's younger. We've seen 6 years of David Njoku. Like, let's just pass it on, man. Like, send him to Bust Island.
dude, we've seen.
One thing I will say about David Njoku, he had more touchdowns last season than Kyle Pitts has in his entire career up to this point.
Yeah.
Oh,
Wait, how many tell me?
4. He only.
Oh no. Oh my God,
Kyle
Pitts.
dude.
If you're watching this, Kyle Pitts, we hate you.
Yeah, I think fantasy community just hates him. Like,
Yeah.
Dynasty community loves Kyle Pitts, and they hate Arthur Smith and Desmond Ritter.
Right.
dude,
Very
is
true.
Kyle Pitts really not? Oh my God, Kyle Pitts only has 3 career touchdowns.
Yeah, it was all his rookie year, right?
No, he had 1 his rookie year.
And he had, yeah, it's really bad for Kyle Pitts.
All right, what do we got? One more left. Join in the doghouse, Paul, and then we'll call
That's
quits.
it.
Oh, nothing.
Nope.
Okay.
No, you know what? Throw in. Never mind. I'm gonna.
No,
make
say it. Say it.
I'm gonna make a really bad joke.
Oh, okay. Then we'll save that for week 4.
No, it's actually not a bad joke.
okay.
Just cut that part out. That's fine.
You're good. We'll keep it.
No, I was gonna say who we should put in the doghouse is Arthur Smith.
Yeah.
No, that's not what I wanted to say. I cleaned it up. I
Close
cleaned
us
it up.
out, John. Close
Yeah,
us
I cleaned
out.
it up so quickly on the spot. Just cut all that. Because it's not funny and it was not going to be pleasant. So
Brought to you by Belly Up Sports Media.
The
We
eye
are
test.
the eye test, and we'll be back next week. Thanks for everyone watching on YouTube and listening on Apple and Spotify. We cannot wait for week 4. Remember, set your lineup Saturday night because if you're on the West Coast, football starts at 6 a.m. Bobby has made that mistake plenty of times, I feel like.
6 a.m. It starts at for the London games. Yes, you're right. You're
Yeah,
right. I did make
exactly.
that mistake last year. Yeah.
Yes, you did. And
can I please start Alvin Kamara?
Yeah, right.
Please? I forgot to wake up.
Yeah, there's always someone. Dude, I didn't know. Please, I would have started him. Like it's like after like Devon A-Chain goes off, like, dude, I would have started Devon A-Chain if I knew he was playing at 9 a.m.
Yep.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah.
And
Are
don't
you
forget,
sure about that?
That's great, dude. All right. Well, hey, thanks everyone watching. This is the Fantasy Doghouse. We'll be back next week, letting some people free, putting them on the stand. We're going to try and mix it up a little bit next week. We'll show you what we have in store. See you later for week 4. Over and out. Eye test. Over and out.
peace.